Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everyone. It's 5 o'clock Central European time, and we are ready for this new webinar. And this is the first webinar where we also have none less than 5 TMS WEB Core power users invited who will talk about their experience with TMS WEB Core, who will share their knowledge and tips and tricks. And so I'm thinking this will be a very exciting webinar. Thanks for your time. Thanks for being here. And let's get started. Let's try to give access to our special invites today, who is Andrew Simmert, Dave Akerman, Howard Sanderson, Martin Sur, and Russell Weech. So I'm going to try now to give the microphone and also the camera to our invites for today. And
morning.
Okay, there we have Dave. Hello, Dave. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Hello.
Do I have everyone right now? Maybe I'm missing one. Let me have a look. So, okay. Here is Martin. Martin, you should have also the microphone right now. Everyone's here. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
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 Hi.
Many thanks for having you here during this webinar, and I'm sure that our attendees will also be super excited to hear about your experience with WEB Core. And so here is the list of all of us: Andrew, Dave, Howard, Martin, and Russell. And if I'm correct, I'm just having a little bit doubt about Andrew. You're from the US, that's correct?
Vancouver, Canada.
Vancouver, Canada. Okay. So we have Canada in the house. Dave, you're from the UK, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Howard, we have the United States in the house.
Yep, Oregon.
Oregon. And Martin, Germany.
Right.
And another from the UK, Russell, right?
That's right, yeah.
I'm going to stop for a second to adjust my lights.
And so I'm here from the main office from TMS in Belgium. So we are, I think, well presented from all over the world. And let's first have a quick overview of who is who in our panel today. First, we have Andrew. Maybe, Andrew, you can give some highlights or comments on what we put together in a bullet list or a nutshell for your merits in the world of software development.
Sure. I've been using Delphi and Pascal since high school, like some other people here. Most of my work has been designing applications for agriculture, commercial greenhouses mostly. And as it turns out, it's only been 1 or 2 apps that I've worked on for a great many years, a couple of VCL apps. So TMS WEB Core is kind of a reimagining of that infrastructure for web-enabled browsers. And that's a little bit of what I'm going to show you today. And I've tried other things in the past, intraweb and pure Java, all that kind of stuff. But this is the first time I've come across a framework that kind of did what I needed to do. So pretty happy to show what I've done.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. And we look forward to see these things that you created so far in a moment. Let's first have a brief overview of the merits from Dave in the space of software development with Delphi, which is also, I think, quite impressive and quite a feat, right, Dave?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, basically I'm an electronics engineer. Got doing software basically from university onwards. Programmed previously in assembler, C, Fortran, a few other languages, Visual Basic. Discovered Delphi, thought it was much better than anything else. I've been using that ever since. For work, it's VCL, it's all Windows, embedded Windows PCs usually. And as I'm heading slowly towards retirement, I'm doing more in my hobby, which is flying high altitude balloons up into the stratosphere. And obviously I want to use coding for that, so I write trackers in C usually, and all the receiving equipment and server and everything else is in Delphi.
You didn't mention here on the list, but you were also a kind of indirectly involved with the Mars landing that happened. Was it last year or?
Yeah, that's right. I'm wearing the shirt. So one of my customers makes textile fabrics, and one of their customers is NASA. Actually, they supply SpaceX as well, and they supply material for parachutes. So I discovered that my software helped make the parachute that landed the last rover on Mars. That's quite nice to look up at Mars in the sky. I think something I did indirectly anyway ended up on that planet.
And also quite impressive, I think, that Delphi was actually part of realizing that almost unbelievable feat, this smooth landing on Mars.
Yeah, so because Delphi does everything I need for industrial automation, which is what that project was. So it does everything from communications to I/O devices like Seal Bus and RS-485 to database and user interface and everything else. So in one language, you can do everything you need. That's great.
Exactly. That's what we love, and that's why we are here, I think. Mm-hmm. Howard, we're going to the US. You are also a very long time Delphi user, right?
Oh yeah, I started out when it first came out. Curiously enough, I started out in electrical engineering too, doing agricultural instrumentation. And way back when, I developed what would be the Raspberry Pi now, way back when, in a primitive form. So that was interesting. Then I got married a wife who was in real estate, and we started doing real estate. We did the first contact management system for real estate in the United States using Delphi. And so I've been rewriting it. Well, my customer said they had to have something they could share data with their assistants. So it had to be web-based, and they had to run it on an iPad. So it had to be, the only solution I could find was TMS WEB Core. And so that was great fun developing that. The engine I looked at, I looked at, going with the Xdata thing and a big engine, but my people only have limited data. So I went with Firestore because it was easy to use and inexpensive. And I'm rewriting a new contact manager again in real estate that has to run on the iPad. I mean the iPhone, for heaven's sake. So my code has to run on every size computer there is, which is an interesting challenge.
All right. Thanks, Howard. We come back to that in a moment. I also see from the questions that there is some remark about audio on Safari, which is a known issue or a known thing, permission thing on the Safari browser, where you might have to specifically enable for the TMS Web Academy domain that Safari will play audio from that domain. So that is a kind of permission thing with that Apple introduced to prevent that someone can have audio playing automatically when you open an URL and they want that there's permission to deal with that. So it's a matter of looking this up in your Safari browser and then everything should be fine, also from an Apple device on the Safari browser. All right, and then we go to Germany for Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Bruno. For me, everything started out in 1986 in school with Turbo Pascal, kind of a hobby, and I started Delphi in 1995. And I've always had a big focus on developing database applications, mostly with Oracle, but also Firebird and Postgres, MySQL, you name them. And in 2016, with a couple of friends, professional software developers and long-term management friends, we started some project, and we heavily focus on building cloud-based systems which run in managed Kubernetes environments. And I've also done some projects in the .NET environment and in the Java environment, but often come back to Delphi as a language of choice, and nowadays TMS WEB Core. And yeah, we are in the aviation and logistics business field, and that's kind of interesting these days.
All right, we will learn about that, because there is also, I know the story you told me in more detail, the ecological things that this packaging software that you have built, that plays an important role. And so we'll come to that in a moment, Martin. That for sure is, I think, a very interesting story. And then, last but not least, Russell from the UK.
Yeah, hello. I've been using Delphi now since Delphi 1, pretty much as soon as it was launched. We've always tried to done work with websites, so we did like one of the first 100 websites in the UK and the first UK search engine. We had no idea what we had at the time, but that's what we had. And we had developed our own framework for using jQuery, using WebBroker backends. We've done quite a lot with WebBroker, but I've been playing around with TMS WEB Core and Xdata for the last year or so, and then a client came along with a project which for which it fitted the bill very, very well indeed. So that's what we'll be showing today. So that'd be quite. That's been quite interesting to work on, and very quick. We had a very short time period to actually develop the application, at least to its first release. So.
Great. So you will also share us in a moment some more details about exciting development. If I'm not mistaken, am I correct that all the 6 of us are Delphi 1 users?
Yep.
Is that a surprising coincidence or not?
Yeah.
So we are no longer 25.
Yeah, we are more like 25 in the reverse order, something like that.
Yes.
All right. Good. I think let's not lose much more time, as I think our audience will be very interested to have a look at what you accomplished and achieved, and the advice, the tips and tricks that you have. Know that you can put your questions in the chat channel, And so I will read out loud the question in the chat channel, because this is also going to be recorded, and you will also be able to see the replay afterwards, so that you know the question that is posed. For focus, I propose that I give the audio and the camera to our presenter, who is showing his project and tips and tricks, and that we switch one by one this way, and then at the end we all come back together, and we can all in common or together also answer your questions. So all attention to Andrew now, who I will first stop my own screen sharing, and then I will give the screen sharing to Andrew, and I will turn off the microphone and camera from the other attendees. So Andrew, I think you should now be able to share your screen. Fantastic.
Okay. Can you see that all right?
I give you the word, and I'm looking forward myself to see all the work you've been doing recently.
Everybody can see that?
Yes.
Okay. So let's get started. This is a, excuse me, this is a TMS WEB Core app. It's set up as a PWA app. And what I'm going to focus on in the presentation is just the additional third-party JavaScript libraries that I've used to make this work the way that I want. So on the opening screen, this is just showing Google Chrome. The calendar picker here is a flat picker, a JavaScript project. And the main thing that I wanted out of that was the ability to select the dates that show up based on other choices. So as you select different things, you get different dates.
Right. Okay.
All good. And that just shows.
No, not yet. I'm going to go up the chemist soon. So, yeah.
This is a way to show how that has different combinations of things.
Sorry for the interruption, but I had indeed not muted Russell, but okay, now we have full focus and attention, Andrew, on you. Okay.
We're all good then?
Yes.
Okay. So next up on our app, we have a login screen. This little block of text here is implemented with CodeMirror. And the reason we're using CodeMirror is so that we get our fancy little syntax highlighting, just to make it kind of nice and a fancy scroll bar. The other thing about this app is because it's all web-based, we can change themes just by changing CSS files. So I've got a little button here to allow us to change different themes for the app. So for today, we're going to go with a simple one, just to make it not distracting in any way. And everything that we're doing here is based on connections to an Xdata server. So all the data that you see is from an Xdata DB2 server. It's also set up to work with a MySQL server. And all the communication is handled sort of on a transactional basis with all the usual JWT suspects, all that kind of stuff. All right. So in this app, basically we have a list of modules on the side and this main form in the middle. And as we select different menu items, it loads the module into this form. And what I'm going to show you today is basically a data collection form. So IPM corresponds to integrated pest management. Think of it as bug counting. And it's just a really simple example of how this kind of stuff works. Basically, you select a bunch of fields from, these are TWeb lookups, and you select whatever it is that you're looking for, put in a count of how many bugs say something like whitefly, and then add a record. And you can see a little thing comes up saying a record's been added. We can add records, we can change numbers, all that kind of thing. That's how it works. On the IPM records page, we have a whole bunch of custom forms. This is a tabulator grid. So if you want to see records, you click search for records. It'll show you all the records. And we have controls here to filter records. So if you just want to see records today, we can search all the records today. We can go back and enter more records. Add a record. Go over here, search for the records, and they appear. So this is a tabulator table. It has things like being able to drag and drop columns, change sizes, all that kind of stuff. I added a navigator, so you can kind of be familiar with that because we've had navigators forever. But it also is used in some of these other areas. So for example, this is a tabulator form as well, where we can filter records. So if all we wanted to look for was whitefly, we could go over here and find whitefly from the list and do it that way. Sorry, it's kind of a whirlwind tour here, but we're just trying to show the controls and how we use them. And because this is a generic data entry thing, we have the ability here to adjust the things that you're entering. So in this case, we have zones. This is another tabulator table. And if we can turn off or turn on zones, and we can rename zones. So we'll say zone TMS. And then when we go back to the data entry tab, you'll see that the list of zones changes based on whatever we've entered. As you're moving through the app, doing things in WEB Core, every time it communicates with Xdata, you'll see up in the top corner here a little animation, and that's just what I use to indicate that there's something going on in the background. The other major control we have is for editing text. So like this description here, we have another module and configuration manager, and this is basically just a front end to Sun editor, which is an HTML editor. So you can go in, you can pick a document and you can make changes to it and have those changes available in the app right away. Also behind the scenes, every time you do something in the app, there's a log that keeps track of it all and also keeps track of the performance of things. So when we retrieve parameters and things, I can see how long it takes. And when you log in, there's a bunch of information about who's logged in and what browser they used, all this kind of thing. This information is logged so that I can see later on if somebody's having troubles. There's another module here for security. Again, we're using a lot of tabulator tables. And here you can see a list of all of the logs that we have. So in this case, there's 1,700 records and everything kind of flows smoothly. You don't wait for anything. It's all very, very performant. And it all works super well. And again, we have the theme. So if you don't like how it looks, you click a button and you get a different theme. So that's what I have for you today. I hope you found it interesting and look forward to any questions that you might have.
Very exciting, Andrew. It's actually also for me the first time I see it. I see there are a couple of questions, and one of the questions is someone is asking what the tabulator is. Maybe you have some more information.
Yeah, Tabulator is a JavaScript project. Tabulator.info, I think, is the URL. And you can go online. It's on GitHub. There's one developer, and he updates it weekly, I think. And he's very responsive to questions. It is a grid that I hadn't used before I used TMS WEB Core. I was just looking for a grid that could do all the things that I wanted it to do, and the usual Delphi tools didn't seem to have enough of the things quickly enough, and that was sort of sitting there, and it already worked. And because TMS WEB Core can use JavaScript libraries pretty much instantly, it was a good choice.
You get the data from the XData server.
Yes.
Did you have to do anything special from the JSON you received from the XData server to get it into the tabulator?
Nope, Tabulator understands JSON perfectly well. So you basically just export data from XData in JSON, and it goes directly into a Tabulator table. And within Tabulator, you can define columns, and it's got a whole suite of tools for manipulating data to change or accommodate date and time formats and other kinds of lookups, that kind of stuff. So it was actually very, very easy to implement. And I've actually put examples of how to use Tabulator in the TMS Support Center. So you can check out the gory details of that if you're interested.
That's also indeed something very important to mention. That is, Andrew, that you took the initiative to have a special section in our support center where you share tips and tricks. And we actually made that a top item topic in the WEB Core Support Center. So if you go to the Support Center in the WEB Core category, that's actually the first item that you will find. Andrew, you shared already a lot of tips and tricks there, but the nice thing is that we have also seen that other users have followed that. So I think meanwhile, it's already a very interesting bundle of information that can help you to get things faster, easier, nicer with WEB Core. Another thing that I wanted to ask Andrew was that you mentioned that this is a PWA.
Yes.
Was that with the intention to also use the offline capability?
Partly it was to make it easy to use on an iPad or an iPhone, but the idea was also to have it so that it can collect data while not connected to the internet. So if you're walking around counting bugs, for example, it would be handy to enter data while you're not without an internet connection, because greenhouses are like giant Faraday cages. They often don't have even cell reception. That part of it hasn't been finished yet, but that was the main justification for the PWA end of it. So we'll get to that. But yeah, that makes it even more powerful, right?
And another question that I'm always really interested in is, you know that some people approach web application development in WEB Core with the HTML first approach, or some prefer to use it with the form designer and have the layout controlled by the form designer. So I'm wondering what approach that you have used.
A bit of both. I use HTML and CSS entirely for styling. So colors and themes is entirely 100% CSS. But the layout and adjustments and that kind of thing is mostly done in the form designer. So this makes me less of a fan of FNC components, because I like to style it all in CSS, and that's a bit harder with FNC. But for the most part, it's just layout is done using tables and page controls. I love page controls. There's page controls everywhere. So that's all done in the IDE, and it's really just the CSS that takes over all the colors and the rounding and some of the tweaks here and there.
All right, great. Andrew, thank you very much. Stay with us because we have a common Q&A at the end.
Okay.
If others have questions related to all the work that Andrew did so far, don't hesitate to put it in the chat box, or we can further discuss, follow up in the Q&A at the end. So thanks so much, Andrew. And
you're welcome.
We will switch now to Dave. Dave Ackerman. So now, Dave, you should have the capability to share your screen and also enable your camera. Okay, the screen.
Okay.
See?
Can you see that? Oh, I can see it.
They're fantastic. Everything is fine, Dave. So you have the words.
Thank you. Okay, so my hobby, which I spend more time doing now than actual work, is high altitude ballooning. So this is a flight I did shortly before lockdown, and that's the kind of thing this hobby gives you, images like that. Not even NASA managed to do that one. This is me launching a balloon. So these are hydrogen or helium balloons. They're gas balloons, not hot air balloons. So a hot air balloon is much bigger, but only goes up to maybe 1 kilometer or so. These are smaller, but they get much bigger when they go up. And as you'll see on the next slide. So they start off, that's a fairly large balloon, and it's about 2 meters diameter. And you can see below that there's a parachute, and then at the bottom is the payload. And that would have cameras and maybe electronics for measuring temperature, that kind of thing, and a tracker. So that goes up. Next thing, 2 hours later, is it bursts. And that particular balloon would burst at about 12 meters. So it starts off at something you could hold to something that could encapsulate your house, probably. And then it comes down on the parachute. No parachute, it's going to come down very quickly. So that essentially is the hobby. The most important part of the hobby is tracking, because if we don't know where the thing is, then what's the point in launching it? So top left, that's a Raspberry Pi Zero tracker. So that has a GPS on there, so it knows where it is, and then a radio transmitter, and it transmits its position down to the ground. And then on the ground, we have multiple receivers, a Pi with a board on it, which receives that telemetry and then passes it on to a server, which is shared amongst everyone else in the hobby. And that server then drives a map. So we have a Google map, just a web page, someone else wrote this, I didn't, which shows where your balloon is and where everyone else is. There might be 10, 20, 30 balloons around the world on that map at once. If you're chasing in a car, then you can upload the car position through the same server, and you can see these little car icons. That flight there was the first Raspberry Pi flight, which was mine just under 10 years ago. So that receiver at the bottom, what we need there is an aerial of some sort. So this is a magnetic mount aerial that goes on the roof of the car, a radio receiver plugged into a Pi, and then this is a GPS. So if the Pi knows where the balloon is and where it is, then it can give you a direction. It can say, oh, the balloon's 100 kilometers ahead of you, or when you collect it, it'll tell you it's 100 meters to your right, so you can go and track it down very easily. And that's one I built before. That was written in Python, and that's a little case with the aerial on top and a user interface. If you're a Star Trek fan, you'll recognize that general layout. And this gives you everything you need to chase the balloon. So when WEB Core managed to added Miletus support for the Pi, I thought, well, maybe I can do the same thing that I did in Python, but in Delphi. So the key things are, it needs to be able to interface to the radio, and the radio is an SPI connection to the Pi, and Miletus has the component for that. The GPS is serial, or it's UART, good old UART, and Miletus has that. Also, TMS WEB Core has a very good map. We can draw markers on for the balloons and the cars, circles and polylines to show the route of the balloon and the radio range from the balloon. Then the next two components I use to interface to the servers. Then I use some FNC components to show direction on the display. I even use the Miletus shell component to invoke a speech program that will tell you, oh, the balloon has just burst or the balloon has landed. Because if you're driving, you don't want to be looking at a screen. You'd much rather have this over speech. And last but not least is ini file settings for so I can store my ID and other information I need for the program to work. I'm going to go through these bits quite quickly. So this is a how the GPS connects. It connects on the serial port, which is these 2 pins on the Pi header. And this on the left is the TMS component. So we just basically tell it which ports on the device on the Pi we're using. The baud rate is 9600 for GPS, and that component then wraps up that hardware for us. And GPSs generally send messages like this, which are standard formats. If you buy a GPS from anyone, it will send this kind of thing, and that's got the time in it, latitude and longitude, slightly weird format, number of satellites, and the altitude. So from that, it can put the car on the map. I won't go through the code, but basically that's all you need to be able to read the GPS data. And then once I get a line of data, then that routine there parses it. SPI is a bit more complex software-wise, and I won't show code for that because that'll take too long. And it's a few more wires, but basically that's all encapsulated in this Miletus component. And on the radio side, we receive a similar looking message, which starts off with the name of the balloon, time, latitude, longitude, and altitude. So in this case, that balloon is just under 28 kilometers high. And the result is, between those 2 things, is we can show the balloon on the map, and we can show the car on the map. This is the FNC Google Map component, and this area here, so the new function that was added a few weeks ago, is an overlay which you define in HTML. So these are 4 HTML buttons which you can then link to code. So in the app, I can click on this button for car, and it will center the map on the car. And I can click on high altitude balloon, and it will center the map on the balloon. And even directions, you click on that, and it will show directions through Google to get to the balloon. And that's what the app looks like now. At the top, we have the location of the balloon. I can actually chase or track 3 balloons or 3 transmitters at the same time, so 3 buttons here. At the bottom, this area is all the sources for telemetry or data. So I've got GPS. This is the area for the radio transmitter. This is the area for the server, because we can download positions from the server as well as upload them. This is our GPS position, and this is the status of the upload. So I can just, at a glance, see if it's downloading, see if it's uploading. In that screen. And the way this program works is all these buttons just load a form into this area here. So I've separated all, so the payload screen is a form, the direction screen is a form, the map screen is a form, to keep all the code separate. And the best way I've found of doing this is to load them into panels. So in this area here, there are, I think, eight different panels, all of which are invisible at startup. And I load a form into the panel. And then when you click the button, all it does is make that panel visible and the previous one invisible, which you see on here. So, oh, this is the load code, I'm sorry. Go on one more. So if I click this button for the map, it will tell the program to load the map form, make this panel visible, which is already holding the map form. The map is already loaded at the start of the program, so it already has the location of the car and the balloon and everything else. So it's very quick from a click on the button to make this panel visible, and then the form appears with the panel, and it makes for quite a nice slick user interface, I find. And the last chat was mentioning about CSS, and I use it very little, basically because I don't know much about it. But I wanted to get these nice rounded edges. So whereas the rest of the user interface I do in Delphi, I couldn't do the rounded edges here in Delphi. So I just found some code online for how to make rounded edges. So that's the top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, I think. And then so I defined top left as being rounded 12 pixels on the top left corner, and then I associate this label here with top left, and instantly that makes that rounded. So it's pretty straightforward. A few tips. There's quite a learning curve, I have to say. Even if the good thing is Delphi is just the same as before. The components mostly work the same as they would in VCL, but there are some differences. The main one is it's asynchronous. So if you load a form, you can't then go and use the form immediately, because the form loads asynchronously from the code that requested that load. So there's an await function. You need to learn about that to wait for the form to load before you do anything with it. I mentioned CSS. If you know that, that helps. If you don't, learn it. Be friends with timers. Some of the components on the hardware side, you might expect to have events for receive data from UART, that kind of thing. They don't exist. So you have to poll. So you have to do timers to poll. I test mostly on Windows, and do test on the Pi only when I have to. Testing on Windows is much quicker. So I actually have code that says, are we on Windows? If so, it would load code that pretends to be the Pi. Also, I've got Samba, which is file sharing on the Pi, so you can just copy the executable from the Pi to the. Can everyone hear me? I can see someone saying about no sound. Okay, good. So when you develop, you end up with an executable you can just copy with a little batch file from the PC to the Pi. And I control the Pi from VNC. And the last thing there is that very excellent thread that Andrew started with hints and tips. Do read it, and do read the manual as well. And lastly, we'll wait for YouTube to load up. Good. Good. Right. So this is the application running on a Pi. And that was all the forms loading just in a couple of seconds. And then you can see the live GPS data down the bottom. And this is me clicking on the buttons on the left. So you can see the telemetry in nice big letters. That gauge is an FNC gauge, very pretty. There's the balloon coming up, and then I click on car and it will go back to the car. So it's nice and quick. SSDV is for images, but that tracker doesn't send images, so there were none there. There's a log screen with telemetry, and anything that goes into log screen is read out as speech as well while it's running. And these are all the sources. So you can see there the telemetry is here and the GPS down here. Oh, that's that. That's it. And
all right, Dave, thanks very much for your presentation. I think
it only took 15 minutes.
I didn't understand, Dave.
Oh, it only took me 15 minutes, not the 10 you gave me.
So no problem at all. No, but thank you very much, and especially for showing TMS WEB Core from a completely different angle, which is to create an application that actually runs on a Raspberry Pi. So for all viewers here today, the screenshots that you showed, these are all taken from the Raspberry Pi, from the application running on the Raspberry Pi, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I can even, let me just get the screen up.
I guess that you connect some kind of small screen to the HDMI output from the Raspberry Pi.
Let's see if you can see it. So this is one screen I've got here. And let's see if I can quickly VNC to that. I'll just, there we go.
And just for everyone to know, okay, fantastic. We see the application running.
That's the application running there. Yeah.
Excellent. Just for everyone to know, you create this application directly out from the Delphi IDE. You design, develop the application from the IDE, and then the IDE, from the IDE, it produces the executable for the Raspberry Pi, and then you simply transfer the executable to the Raspberry Pi, right?
Yeah, exactly. I can probably, I'll just get this down to something you can see.
I see that somehow they've lost the screen sharing. Let me have a look. If I need to enable Dave again, but it looks like we might have lost. I'm not sure what happened, that we might have lost Dave altogether. I don't see Dave in the list.
Come back.
Okay. Voice is back.
I'm back. Sorry.
Okay.
I'll blame the internet, but I may have pressed Alt F4 on the wrong screen. So yeah, so basically, if I show you here, so that's a folder on what my
You're not sharing the screen right now, Dave.
Okay, yeah, let's do that quickly.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, great. So that's a folder on the Pi, and then I just have a command line. So I just copy from the folder with the executable down to the Pi, just a command like that. So it's very straightforward. So the process is build on the Pi, run that line there. This then this executable updates, then I can run it. So it takes a few seconds.
Yeah, simple Xcopy deployment.
Yeah.
And then you're up and running.
Yeah, indeed.
Dave, I'm also always surprised when we release some kind of new functionality in TMS WEB Core. I believe it's often within 24 hours that you already take advantage of it.
Yeah, probably. Well, a couple of cases I asked for it, but yeah, yes. Yeah, I think it's a newish product for the Pi, and if there's something you've added, it's something I probably need.
There's a question here: what operating system you're using on the Raspberry Pi?
That's just the latest 32-bit, but latest Raspberry Pi operating system, whichever it is. It's a standard one.
Yeah. So if you go to the,
I don't think it makes any difference. Yeah, it should run anyway.
Important note though is recently Raspberry Pi released the 64-bit version of the Raspberry Pi OS, because it's now officially called Raspberry Pi OS. I believe it was in February that they released the 64-bit version, but at this moment, Miletus is still supporting the 32-bit version. We are looking and trying also to get 64-bit supported, so expect that coming. But at this very moment, it is the 32-bit version of the Raspberry Pi OS that is supported. All right.
So are you saying that it won't, the 32-bit apps won't run on 64-bit, or just they're not 64-bit?
That's a good question. We need to do some more research to have a definitive answer on that. We actually do know from a support case, we need a recent support case where there were some issues with running the 32 bits, and it was actually related to the libgtk library that is being used, and of course we link to the 32-bit version, and that one was not installed or available by default on the 64-bit version. So needs further investigation, but for now we recommend the default Raspberry Pi operating system that you get from the Raspberry Pi website. At this moment, the 32-bit version is still the default operating system that they provide.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right.
Okay. And one last thing, someone said it's my GitHub repository is private, so I've just made it public.
Okay, interesting. Dave, that was TMS WEB Core from a very special and a very interesting angle to create Raspberry Pi applications from it. So we'll switch now to the US with Howard. And of course, we see you back in a moment in the Q&A,
sure,
where we can take the questions from everyone here. So trying to find Howard, and Howard should be able now to share the screen and enable the camera and microphone. Howard, are you there?
I am here. I think I've clicked all the right buttons.
Microphone is fine.
Let's see, entire screen. We'll share the entire screen. Share. Okay.
Screen is there. Just the camera is not yet there.
Oh, camera. Turn on my webcam. There we go. There we go.
Okay, fantastic. Welcome, Howard.
Well, so far I'm very humbled at what I've seen. My goodness, I'm impressed. Solid impressions. Yeah, so on my app, I've used a mix of FNC and web controls, and some. Okay, so my app's written for real estate agents to analyze investment properties for purchase. And it was Firestore, Google Firestore is the database I ended up using. Because it only requires one component, the TMS Firestore component. And my customers, I've got like about 100 customers on this now, and they don't have very big databases. They've got 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 properties there. Oops, get on my right screen. And so let's see, how do I show you this? Okay, so one interesting thing about photographs was when I'm looking for photographs using these components, choose a file. Sizing the files is interesting because Google Firestore can't take bigger than 1 megabyte file in anything. So I had to work out some image resizing to be able to use the images. So if anybody wants to know how to do that, I had a few tricks on that. So let's see. So as I come across here, so all of these controls, the tabs controls you see, are all set. Let me show you, where's my Delphi screen? I'll bring it over here. So it's all done with form hosting. I've got one panel here, and I've got about 30 different forms that fit in this panel. So as I go across the tabs, it doesn't, they're not anything underneath them. They're just a panel that I put forms in. So that's what you're seeing as to go across these. Anything interesting here on income? Let's see if I pick a multifamily. I put these little dots on here to make it obvious that it pops up in a new screen. And there's a little grid. Close that. What else can I show you? Expenses, all kinds of stuff to do with investing in properties. Once you go through all these, then you say, oh, let me look at my data. And so here's these financial indicators, and I put an underline to indicate that there is a help screen that pops up. And one thing they can do is they can say, well, I want to slide this data. So looking at the cap rate, which is important for buying properties, you can pull on the slider over here, and the cap rate will change. So it lets them see how the numbers all work, and they can fiddle, because most realtors don't understand what they're even calculating. So this select slide thing helps them do that. Charts are kind of interesting because let's go over the chart. Okay, spreadsheets. Wow, spreadsheets. I mean, you've got all kinds of tabs of spreadsheet data. Charts, however, are a little bit slow because, I don't know, in TMS when you do a chart, and I don't know why that one's taking so long. My, I should have checked this before I showed you. There it is. So the charts, and I don't know if there's a way to speed that up, but that's the charts. And this is all done with FNC components also. And then, of course, you can print. Let's get off this one. Let's print. And here's all the possibilities they can do for printing. When they print, it generates a PDF file, again, using the TMS components. So
is this now a PDF generated from your
it's a PDF is generated from my application, yeah. And it's using the forget the name.
The FNC PDF library component?
Yeah, it's using that PDF library component. You also have to, if you want to do the PDFs, see if I can get Delphi to come over here. Okay, where's Delphi? Well, my 3 monitors are starting to fight me. Close this. So I can't seem to get. Anyway, it uses like if you want to use Firestore components, if you want to use the if I could get, I don't know why, but I can't get Delphi to show on my main screen. I can maybe close it, but anyway, it uses a FNC PDF library, and I generate the PDF reports out of that. I'm not printing directly; it's all PDF reports.
Okay.
Okay, so now I'm working on a new project. This has got to run on an iPhone, and so it turns out from here to here, that's exactly the size of an iPhone. And so if I'm going to say I want to let's edit contacts. So there's again the size of an iPhone, and I can pick tags, and that goes into this pick tags there. So if I change the size of the screen down to iPhone size, you can see all of a sudden the menus shift, and they're gone across the top, and now I've got a pull down menu over here. And so if I'm on the iPhone then, and I click select an action, then I can edit the contact. Pops up there. I can pick tags for this person. And if you'll notice, I'm using a different control here in the iPhone than I was over here. If I do the same thing over here and say edit the contact, pick tags, you can't do this in an iPhone and have it work. It doesn't work. And so I had to use a different control on the iPhone versus a regular computer. So there's a lot of fiddling like that you've got to do when you're playing iPhone games. I also had to up the size of all my fonts to 11s instead of 9s for them to be visible on the iPhone. So that's viewing there. I have put on my website notes about using, and you can see these looking here, sirenledger.com.tms. And I've got things about using WEB Core, progressive web apps, why I chose Firestore notes. Now, if you read the documentation, PDF Firestore documentation now is really good. As I worked with TMS developing this, they didn't even have async in the Firestore stuff yet. And so on my main form for my real estate program, I've got like 15 timers. It's a nightmare. But if you use the async stuff in Firestore, you get rid of virtually all the timers. So it's lovely. And then since you don't have SQL with Firestore, you have to have service filters, and service filters let you decide what you're looking at and what you're not looking at. So loss of SQL is a nightmare in some aspects. On the other hand, you get around it without much trouble. So these are all notes you can look at if you want to. And then debugging notes, opening new forms, pop-up forms. So if anybody wants to see that, poke through my notes, there's where to find them. Then at the end of this whole presentation, I've got a programmer's utility to help you find, replace, search for stuff in your files, and it works with anything. And we'll talk about it at the very end of all the presentations. Okay, have I left everybody confused enough?
One question, Howard. So everyone can obviously navigate to staranalyzer.com.
Yeah.
/run. Is that actually something all viewers can do at this very
moment?
Yeah,
if you go to staranalyzer.com/run, it'll pop up and show you, oh, you don't have an ID yet, but here you can run a trial program, you can run a demo program, and you can watch everything go staranalyzer.com/run with lowercase.
So
and you can watch that work.
Everyone can play with it himself.
And you can play with it and diddle with it and see what it does. And it's again, there's no JavaScript. You must save changes. All right, I can save the changes. It's all JavaScript. If there's no JavaScript in it, my goodness, JavaScript in my brain. Wow. So I'm really happy I don't have to use hardly any JavaScript. It's all FNC and web controls.
Okay. Very interesting, Howard. And the interesting thing for sure is also that also you are using WebCore from a different angle than Andrew and Dave showed so far, which is that you have used quite a bit of FNC UI controls. There's the chart. I believe there's also the grid that you're using.
The charts and grids and I love the FNC stuff. I love the look of it. The web stuff, I really only use. I don't use much of the web stuff. I use edit boxes and a few things, but most of it's FNC. I really prefer it.
Yeah, the key thing I think here is freedom of choice. And
yeah, you can use either. You know, some people love rounded corners. I hate them. My wife likes one color. I don't. So, you know, I love it where you can change the color of things, and I didn't allow my users to do that. And my wife says, "How come you don't let me change the color? I hate that light blue." So I love what I've seen you guys do with allowing them to change their colors and things. Makes my wife happy.
All right, Howard, thank you very much. And as you already indicated, we have that freebie from you, and I will share the link at the end of the webinar. So thanks for this part, and for sure stay with us for the group Q&A at the end of the session. And at this moment, we are going to Germany, and we are going to Martin. Martin, we are curious to know about your developments with TMS WEB Core, and this will be yet from another angle. So Martin, are you there? Okay, the screen is already there. Now waiting for the microphone and the camera. All right.
Seems to work now.
Yes, we hear you. We see you, Martin, and we see your screen. So you're fully ready to go.
Can you also see the presentation now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Bruno. So it's really interesting to see how many different use cases people are approaching with WebCore. And we do something, again, completely different. And today I'm talking about how we as Sim Project develop software with TMS WEB Core for Visual Studio Code and why we use it. Before talking about WEB Core, I have one slide about Sim Project and what we do. We need that to understand the reasons for using TMS WEB Core for us. And then I'm talking a little bit about current project, its implementation. After that, about WEB Core, and then I'm going to show some things live. So, some project has been founded. It's already more than 5 years ago, and our main business, meanwhile, is developing software solutions for the cloud. And for us, that means our software is running in managed Kubernetes clusters. For the customer, that means he doesn't have to buy physical machines. He isn't going to use any virtual machines at hosting providers. And one of the benefits is you don't have to care about any operating system updates. What we are running is just containers inside of nodes. And that enables us to do scaling and have reliability. When one of the containers goes down, Kubernetes cares about spinning up a new one, and then software is running again. There are a couple of cloud providers where you can run managed Kubernetes. In Germany, Ionos is one of the larger ones. You can run them in Google Cloud, in Amazon Web Services, and of course also on Microsoft Azure Cloud. But we not only develop for the cloud, we also develop within and with the cloud. That means we don't have any servers. We have our development notebooks, and we use GitLab for issues, requirements, engineering, for scheduling tasks to developers, and also for our Git repositories. We have main branch, development branch, and branches for specific issues. Then when an issue is completed, a developer creates a merge request, we do a review, and once we merge, the continuous integration in GitLab runs a build. And when everything is finished, tests are run, and the whole system is deployed to a Kubernetes cluster. And that means we could have one cluster for the test system, and immediately after we merge some new functionality, some minutes later, the customer can see the running system in the cloud and can access the new version in the test environment. And when everything's tested, we do a merge to the main branch, a new build branch, and everything's deployed to the live system. And if for some reason we need another environment, we can just create a new environment, hit a button, and then the whole system runs in another node, and then the customer can use that for presentation, and it's completely independent from all the others. So GitLab is a public service, and you can use that for free. There's a free plan. And if you're using it heavily, there's large projects, a lot of compute time and more developers, then you can use it with a monthly fee. So what kind of project are we currently doing? We have a customer who has invented a reusable and sustainable shipping package. So instead of using cardboard for wrapping goods, they use reusable packages. And Fraunhofer Institute did some research, and with that they save 80% of carbon emission. And these days, that's a pretty impressive number. When they started, they initially used Office products and quickly figured out they need some custom software due to growth. And we, from the beginning, designed the system to be able to run in the cloud in these managed Kubernetes clusters. So what is the system about? It's about order management. There's a track and trace integration. It has a customer portal. It uses a transactional email integration where you can define templates. And when someone places an order, a notification email is sent to that customer. And of course, it does billing. So, of course, this is not only on TMS WEB Core, it's also heavily backend engaged, and we use several microservices which we develop in JavaScript. We use a Mongo database, we use services in the cloud for transactional emails. We do cloud logging, and for all these microservices to be able to communicate with each other, we use a message broker. And so the microservices are completely decoupled, and they can communicate with each other just by sending a message to the message broker, and that part of the system cares about delivering the message to the right other subsystem. And when one of the subsystems goes down, the message broker persists the message and makes sure that when the other system comes up again, the message is delivered. So that's for the backend. And now for the front end, we use TMS WEB Core for Visual Studio Code. And why are we using TMS WEB Core for Visual Studio Code? Well, me personally, I'm a long-term Delphi developer, and I'm used to the component-based architecture, which has proven to be really solid, like with Delphi and the VCL. And everything is in one IDE, Visual Studio Code, which has a really extensible plugin system. And since it's so broadly spread, there are so many plugins, and you get plugins for everything. So you get integration into Git. You can see who has changed which line of code, when, and what has it looked like before. In comparison to other approaches, front-end development in the web is almost JavaScript frameworks. I don't name them, but every year you get another famous JavaScript framework. And maybe after 3 years, a different framework is famous. And no one no longer uses the framework you have chosen. And if you compare that to what Delphi has been in the past, you still can run programs which have been developed 20 years ago and run the same executable on a Windows machine. And the reason for that is Embarcadero has managed the RTL and the VCL library. That's always been a continuous development, and they've managed to make everything backwards compatible. And TMS has 25 plus years experiences in component development, and I hope and expect the same thing here. So the next thing, finding developers. Our experience is there's so many JavaScript developers around, and they love Visual Studio Code. And for them, it's pretty easy to get their feet wet with Object Pascal, and we made that experience. We have new developers on that project who have never done Object Pascal before. But when you're used to web development, you can pretty quickly get productive with Object Pascal. The tools is the other side of the things, and these guys are used to Visual Studio Code, and so everything's really smoothly there. And it can be used on the platform of choice, maybe Windows, Mac, or Linux. So whenever you get a new developer on board, he pretty much can use his known environment, his already existing computer, and start working. What else? For us, of course, since what I've explained a couple of minutes ago, we use GitLab as our main system for creating issues, for running our build jobs. We figured out a way that we can run the TMS compiler inside a Docker container and have that running in GitLab to build the front end and compile the front end as part of our build job. So whenever a developer pushes new code to its branch, the build system builds everything, the backend and the front end. And for building the front end, GitLab can use the TMS compiler. Also important, it's a commercial system, and we get professional support from TMS. And I really have to say, we have used that a couple of times, and it has always been quick, kind, and effective. So if you compare that, for example, to other open source libraries, there's the community. You can search on Stack Overflow, copy paste, problem is sometimes you don't really find what you need. Sometimes you don't understand how it works. And we are really happy having commercial support. So, and now let's do a little hands-on. Everybody can see Visual Studio Code?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not going very deep in Visual Studio Code here. I'm just showing some of the differences compared to Delphi IDE. So one main difference, of course, is we have a form designer which is based on Visual Studio Code, which means it actually is the Chrome engine rendering HTML. So that means when I select a component and specify class names in the element class name property and hit return, the form designer immediately shows the real thing. This is actually HTML styled with CSS. So probably everybody knows that, but I wanted to show this because I guess I'm the only one today using Visual Studio Code, right?
Yes.
So then let's go to a different source code file. And I've talked about plugins. And here we have installed a plugin which is called GitLens. And if I hover over this comment at the right, this shows me what has changed here and who has done it and when this has happened. And there are so many plugins available which you can use with Visual Studio Code. I guess Leon has also posted some videos on YouTube about that. It's worth looking and see what's available there. And let me show one more thing. Visual Studio Code has a Git integration, and this shows me what has changed, which files have changed regarding to the actual branch I'm working on. And when I commit that, and let's put commit message webinar in it. Now I can push this to the Git server. And now I'm bringing up the user interface of GitLab, where I can see the pipelines. So this is the effect of committing and pushing something. Now our build pipeline is running, and you can see the comment which I've put in the commit message. And here I can see the build is running. And I can see this build consists of a couple of jobs. And here's one which builds the front end for a customer portal. When I click on that, I can see the log of the build pipeline, which is running at this moment. So this will take a minute, I guess. So now it's spinning up the compiler inside a Docker container. And this container is built at this moment from a repository. And in a couple of seconds, here we can see it's already compiling. Let's scroll up again. Pass2JS compiler. And here I can see it's the TMS Web Compiler 1425 compiling my code. And since the compiler normally lives inside the Visual Studio Code plugin in the VSIX file, in the extension, I, of course, can use it inside Visual Studio Code. But now it's also running in a container in my build pipeline. So that's what I wanted to show today. Hope it was somehow interesting.
Okay, thanks a lot, Martin. Maybe just to clarify now, you showed us here that you have the build system based on GitLab, that you have used a Docker container for bundling the TMS compiler into that container so that your build system can automatically build your entire application. But of course, you can also directly compile and run your application out of the Visual Studio Code system. So I guess that while you are developing, that is the main thing you do. And of course, when you do the commit, it will ensure that everything, your entire system will build fine, right?
Correct, and that all tests are running, and that the build system will be deployed to the Kubernetes cluster, and everything afterwards is running.
Yes.
So of course I can use the compiler inside Visual Studio Code, but I can be sure that I can't forget anything when I deploy, because we are only deploying from within our pipelines. So there is no excuse like it's running on my system, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If it's running in the build pipeline and all tests pass, that is the reference, not any developer's notebook, right?
Exactly.
So also when the system is deployed from this pipeline and maybe the live system, and we detect an error, we can go back to a previous version just by rerunning the pipeline of the previous version. And there's so much around, a lot of people don't know, and GitLab's really useful. Maybe you don't need that if you're an individual developer just using Visual Studio Code on your own computer. But as soon as you go into enterprise computing, this is standard nowadays. And what I wanted to say is TMS WEB Core is able to play in this field.
I still remember it was a bit tricky with licensing, but other than the licensing, I think
Sure, because you had some internal knowledge we didn't have.
Exactly. But we managed to get everything up and running. So it was clear, you've shown it in front of us, that using the compiler in a container in a continuous integration system is also one of the possibilities with TMS WEB Core. And as one user asked here, this of course is running directly on an Apple Mac device, right?
Right. So I'm using an Apple Mac with Visual Studio Code and TMS WEB Core. And GitLab, of course, is nothing we host. It's a service you can just subscribe to. It has a Git version control system. It has issue tracking. It has a Kanban board, build pipelines, deployment system. And if for normal usage, the free subscription at last for starting will be sufficient.
You indicated, of course, one of the main differences actually with Visual Studio Code is that the form designer is an actually web technology based designer. It is a browser that actually performs a real rendering of your forms. Still, with that approach, would you say that you still use an HTML first approach, or you're rather using the Delphi component-based layouting capabilities?
We use both. For prototyping, it's quicker to use the component-based approach, but even if you do that, you can switch individual forms later and then use the HTML which you generate and hand that over to designers who do CSS and are design experts, and then you get back HTML from design companies, and you can use those and attach your components to them just by selecting which component should be matched with which HTML tag and which ID.
Exactly. And also there, I think, is a major difference when using Visual Studio Code, which is that if it has an abundance, I think, of plugins that make life easier to edit your HTML with showing colors as colors, for example, just mentioning one thing, automatically inserting the HTML start, end tag, attribute, completion, etc. So I guess you also are regularly editing in that area, in that space of your application, or you leave that completely off to a separate person, a designer?
Yes, depending on the stage of development, we start with component-based approach, and then later, maybe for internal projects which are used at customer in-house, that is enough. If we do something like a customer portal, then definitely designers will be involved. I'm also reading some questions here. Is that Mac an M1 Mac? No, it's one of the latest Intel Macs, and it's fast enough, no problems there.
Another question I see is some example of screens or your product. I'm not sure if you can quickly show.
Since that's specific customers software, I'm not able to share what the screens look like.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, Martin, thanks a lot for your contribution from the angle of using it from Visual Studio Code, which of course is for today unique and a very nice and appreciated contribution. And stay for a little while more for general Q&A while I am looking for Russell to give Russell microphone and screen sharing. And then Russell from the UK now.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Russell, you're online, you're live.
Yeah, I'm just sorting out my screen sharing. Hold on. Okay, there we go.
All right.
Okay, so just got a couple of slides, well, 6 slides to go through, just to give us a bit of background, and we'll then look at the actual system. The requirement was for a solution for managing the sales and gift aid claims from one of our clients' charity shops. So there's about 70 shops where people go in and donate goods. These are sold. Then they need to, on behalf of the charity, then the charity needs to claim back gift aid from the tax authorities and report on it, etc. Their original system was developed in-house, and it was in Access, and a very old version of Access 2. But they decided, as a result of the last couple of years, based on COVID, etc., and everyone working from home, they wanted to move basically their whole infrastructure to the cloud, including this application. But one of the new system did have to hold all the data from the old system, so we had to write import routines and things. But there's about 3.5 million sales records and 500,000 donors held by the system. They wanted a web client rather than a desktop because they weren't sure on what the users' computers were going to be front end. They were moving a lot of other systems, so the support we had from the client's IT team was minimal. So in some ways that's great. We were left to our own, and we were talking straight to the end users. But time was critical. So from the start, from them saying go to our first release took about 3 months, which we were quite pleased with because there's quite a lot to do. The actual system is a Firebird 3.5 backend database. We decided to do the whole thing based on the TMS stack. So it's an Xdata server using Aurelius and a WEB Core front end. It was a big change for us. Previously, most of our stuff was Firebird, RAM objects, then with a VCL desktop, FireMonkey desktop, and web broker apps. We wanted to do all the important data work on the server, so basically pretty much everything other than data entry is validated and updated on the server. And anything that might take time needs to run as a background task. There's a few processes, quite a few processes that run, which actually do take quite a long time to process, from several minutes to tens of minutes, 15, 20 minutes maybe for some of the bigger tasks. So we actually wanted to push this into a background task. Our approach was to use to be completely templated because we had to work pretty fast to get it done. So I'll show you some forms. I mean, there aren't really any labels or anything like that. That's all done in HTML by Philip, our designer. So the approach we took is we didn't want to just reverse the Access database because there was a lot in that which wasn't needed. So we actually went from an object design. So we designed the objects and used Aurelius to build the database. I must admit, I still haven't got my head completely around associations. I started doing a bit of that. It just seemed very easy to overdo it and sort of link too many things together, etc. When you need to update the database, the nullable fields are godsend. This is something really worth remembering. And although I kept the entities grouped, I haven't actually used the Aurelius model system yet. Although I am going to extract into that later on. The attributes that you can set up on the basically throughout the Xdata and particularly the Aurelius stuff does make the development a lot simpler and easier to follow. But some attributes didn't work the way I expected, and it did take a little bit of chatting with TMS to get my head around that. But we're all okay on that score now. So on Xdata, we used Aurelius CRUD endpoints, so just which was incredibly quick to implement. We've also implemented a whole range of service modules for two reasons. One, there's some things where we wanted to bring back a little bit more than just the data out of any tables, and also I wanted the ability to actually break it out into smaller server apps, so maybe authentication app runs separately to the main app. For background jobs, we used OmniThread library, the OmniThread library background worker, where we can allocate threads to that, and then we just push jobs into the queue, and it picks them up and runs them in order. We do quite a bit of PDF production, and for that we actually use the Foxit Debody Quick PDF, which we've used on some very big projects for generating invoices and things like that, and that's quite very powerful. And all of that runs inside of a background worker. So all the so I say 1 to 3, I mean 1 to 4 all reside within a single server app, but I've tried to design it so we can split it into smaller apps if needed. The two levels really that for intercepting calls to the CRUD endpoints is the Xdata level. We're using mapped objects to keep it cleaner. I'll show you some of that. And also at the Aurelius object level, which is really great, especially for updates, because it'll show you what's been changed, and then you can make processing decisions based on that. So, come on, okay. So on the web core, we use inheritance. I've used inheritance quite a lot, and I'll show you some of that. So basically, there's a base core form, and then we have a base list form and a base editing form. I'll show you how they work as well. It's quite make the application work much quicker once we sorted that out. So the app was developed completely with templates, and as I just said, there's a master form. Oh, and basically the way we've done it is, I've done it is there's a master form, and all the other forms either load into a div on the master form or they're pop-ups. And being able to integrate raw JavaScript and jQuery meant we could use existing skills for that. And basically we created an object with class methods to make using the JavaScript stuff, the ASM stuff, very simple. The Xdata web data set just made the development really quickly. It's almost, but not quite like developing client server, client server type application in Delphi. Async, we use a lot of that for validation during data entry and the sort of the later addition of await, which I think only came in a few versions ago, does make the code a lot simpler to follow. And with the complex forms, what was nice was to actually use the TMS wizards to generate a form with all the fields on it, and then just use that as the basis, pull that into one of our forms to make the make the form easier. Last thought was, as someone else has already said, read everything, read the manuals, all of it completely. I completely missed the Aurelius abstract entity. Now I have to go back and sort of pull that in. Just because you do something one way doesn't mean the framework well. I mean, one of the examples that caught us out was that we do a lot of updating of the objects on the server, and while the data does get sent back to the web core, or does get sent back to the browser, it doesn't all get reflected in the web. In fact, none of it gets reflected in the client unless you actually force it to be. There are reasons for this, but it's something you need to be aware of. And you do need to think about the processing order because of the async functionality of the of web applications. When we did turn on optimization and obfuscation for release, it did introduce some errors. So we're currently running with these turned off, not on, sorry, off. But it's something we're going to come back to when it's when we have a bit of time. Okay, so that's okay. Let's just get rid of that. Okay, we'll start with the actual app. So I mean, basically, as a standard sort of approach, the login. So what we've got here is we've got a standard menu down the side, and then this is our main panel here, which gets filled with whatever we're doing. And on this side here, oh, this is this big panel is the panel that we're doing it. So in this case, we've got two sections. One is at the moment displays a what's new section, so everyone knows what's changing, which is used on the development site. And then that will become a stats panel, basically a dashboard, typical dashboard there. Down here, we're using using some of the web controls to provide a list of some of the things, the jobs that are being processed. So you can go back and see, we'll show you that in a minute. So the typical approach is, I mean, we'll do this is probably one of the more complex ones, the donor stuff here. So essentially, everything has a basic list form, and we have a quick search, and in there you can type in a postcode, a name, etc. And so this is pulling back the wishes. This is our sort of demo data, so this isn't real data, so we're okay there. And then, so each form then has 2 bits to it at the moment, so you can edit somebody, and this brings a pop-up, which means you can edit the data to go by that person, and then the save button only activates once something makes it active because something's changed, and there's various validation that goes on there. Let me just save that. One of the things is here, it actually saves instantaneously, but it was actually closing so fast that people were asking us, oh, did that save? So we've actually put in a little delay when people save things, so it looks like it's doing a bit of work, but it's actually instantaneous. So we've got that there. And then the other thing, I don't know if these people have got, if I've got anything set up here. No, we haven't got any. Oh, it's here. So these are basically the sales that have happened for this person here, and it just allows us to see what there are. There's no sort of editing involved with this one here. So basically, so if we actually have something like the new sales, so everything basically, when you depart that field, it does a callback to the Xdata server to get the name of the shop that this is sold in. There's various things you can do there. So date. Yeah, so there's various validations that go on the date. So let's look up here. So when you do that, it actually goes and it looks up who that record belongs to and brings back the name. It just gives you that little bit of security there, and it's got various other sort of validations as you go through the form. So close that. I'll just load that back up. So we have various jobs. So one of the things is that all the IDs for the donors are actually so we've placed a job there now, and eventually we've got a timer going. It'll pop up here when things are ready to do. So so here we go. Here's the job. It's popped up here. So it's processing. Once that's processed, it'll say processed. You can click it, download the files for the PDF files that it produces there. So if we actually look at the main form, you can see the sort of approach we use here. So here's Delphi. So here's that main form. Basically, it's just a load of links there, so all the layout stuff is actually done in an HTML template. Their background, it's Bootstrap based, so we use all the Bootstrap classes, etc. on that. then what we have is, so I mean, that one where we're data entering the donors. If I can find the donor form. Okay, so again, very basic. What I've got in Delphi, everything's handled. All that structure is handled within the HTML. So essentially, what I do is I create this. Every field gets an element ID, which is the same as the name of the thing, and then basically I just ship the JavaScript. So all those fields just appear as a mess on an unstructured form, and then Philip takes that and makes it looks decent. Other stuff we've got, so that when we're entering those sales, so basically the daily sales form's got even less on it here, because all the sales boxes are actually generated in code. So that just saves repeating that, and it means we can track them as well. So what we actually have is we have a base core form. Then we have a base list. So a base list has a TWeb DB table control on it. It has all the usual things that go with the table control, all those little controls. Then what we have is again, it's just something that the base came from the wizard generated stuff from the TMS wizard, but we updated it, so we use the grid plugins, etc., and then the code on that just takes that and assigns it, and then each descendant form just sets a few values, and it's sort of, but we put as much code in the base form as we can, so we can knock out the base lists, the list forms quite quickly, and then the base form again, there's a lot of stuff that we already have in that, and then each thing descends from that, and a descendant list form, if you like, registers itself with the form, so it knows which editing form to open up, unless it's something special that needs doing. So it's essentially the approach we've taken there. So it makes it life a lot quicker, and then we just have some pretty standard on the main form. So basically we have a standard show pop-up routine, which we just pass a web form class to, and what to do if it needs a success proc or not. There's basically a show form, which will show the form class. Again, simple. So all the links are just sending show form, t-shop list form, and it just knows what, just handles that. So keeping the code to a minimum, because again, we have to come up with these things which actually make it very solid in approach. So that's really the web core side of things. Then if we actually look at the server application, okay. Again, so essentially we have the entity. So if we actually look at the donor entity here, so we define the entity, the enumeration types and the donor types. We define the indexes, which we don't define if we're actually doing the importing. In fact, the importing routines actually just kill the indexes and then recreate them again anyway. So again, another useful thing is the description, because that I think comes through. We haven't published it yet, but it comes through if you use the Swagger stuff. So again, just defining the different entities. So if we actually look at the main container, lost it. Oh, okay. So here on the container is just the standard sort of setup for an Xdata server with a connection pool, the Aurelius connection and the connection. And then what we've got is So for example, so what we've got is is when we do anything here, we actually so modifying. So what we have is a set of entity. We call them helpers. They're not helpers in the traditional Delphi sense, but basically we have a dictionary of helpers, which then looks at the entity and then pulls the right helper, and that does a variety of things. So for example, again, that donor one there, we've got before insert, and it does sort of various things like updates the objects, etc. We also have things which is whether you're, so double check. So while the Web Core app does sort of prevent people without their right rights seeing certain actions, we just double check it here. So, you know, when you actually do a list, when you call for a list, I'm trying to think which one. So users, for example. Users, helper users. Okay, so whether you can actually get a user record, essentially. So basically, that just double checks. So it says, look, is it an admin? In which case, an admin can get the record, or it's your own record. You're allowed to get your own record. So we do that in the helper, and then that's called on the get function before get, which is somewhere. Okay, here we are. The entity get. So basically, it says, can you get this? So you're allowed to, and then it's either not enough privileges, or it allows you to get the record. So that's what we've done there, basically. So we're using the JWT for the registration. One of the things I'm trying to do at the moment is actually update the JWT with the expiry time based on the last call to the server for a major access, but I haven't actually quite got that working on the web core side yet. So we're looking at that at the moment. Actually put together a demo app to show it doesn't work, so we can send it to TMS to tell us what we did wrong. So I think that's pretty much all I've got to run through here. So yeah.
All right, Russell. I think that was also here from a different angle, which means most importantly the close connection between the front end and the back end, where you used Xdata in the back end and Web Core in the front end, and the Xdata dataset to make your life easier. I also understand that you have used here an HTML first approach using templates. As far as I see, I guess you started from some standard template, or?
Yes, I mean, yeah, we started with a standard template, but I mean, basically I built the forms without the template, if you like. So a new form is just built in Delphi, and then the template comes after that. I just make sure that everything's got an element ID that needs it. So yeah. Yeah.
Was also a question when your application was running and you were there performing your search for donor records, and data was shown in a grid. There was a question what grid you were using there.
Okay, that was TWeb DB table control.
Okay, where you did some customization, I think, to get the icons to start editing from.
Yes, basically, I mean, most of it was copied from one of the demos. I can't remember which one, but yeah. So yeah, if we actually look at so in our base in our base form, base list form. Okay, so what actually happens is there's we have an add row action, so that's called So basically on the data table get cell children event, if the title of the column is actions, what we do is we create, we call a add row actions function, which is actual virtual function, so it can be overridden and descended from. So by default, if the record view option, so that means the user can edit and the actual record allows editing, because there's some which just aren't editable. It creates the edit icon with on click, which is just basically this, and calls the edit record function. Or if you can't edit it, it does a read-only action, and that's a little eye icon. It does the edit, does exactly the same call, except the edit record does know that it's only a view-only approach. And then that's added to in different descendants. So there's other actions like the one we saw where it was to show the sales that had been made by donor. So, yeah.
And so you are actually here, I think, nicely combining, I guess the data is coming from an Xdata server. So it's actually a JSON package, which is then the data set is bound to the DB table control. You customize the cells of that DB control here, as you shown with that event, to get the cell children elements. And I also see that you have used Bootstrap to do some styling on the table control itself.
Yes, yeah, we use it, yeah. So we've done quite a lot of, I mean, basically we've got a lot of CSS work behind it as well. So doing that, yeah. So I mean, there's other things as well. So we can actually, I won't do it because it'll actually show customer data, but we can actually just select a shop to limit the searching to a shop. There's an advanced search, which allows people to get very specific about what they're looking for there. But all the controls being used are actually the standard web core controls at the moment. We are starting to play with the FNC ones, but that's mainly on the dashboard side. So yeah.
I've also seen a question here. How do you generate the PDF report? But I think you explained that is from a quick PDF.
Yes. So essentially, we have templates of PDF templates, and then they're populated. We use the quick PDF to populate the templates with data. So actually, if we go back to here, go back to the dashboard, we can see here that this is actually completed now. So, and if we just click on that and then take a bit of time, because 100 of them, 100 pages.
It's a 100-page PDF right now?
Yes, this is, yeah. So this is downloading from we slightly bypass Xdata on that. And so basically what happens is it actually creates 100, it's actually 200 pages because 100 double-sided forms. Yeah. And what it does, literally all this one does is put in that number at the top. It doesn't do anything else. I mean, we've got others that generate letters and things like that as well. So they take much longer to do because usually it's a lot more than just 200 pages. It can be a couple of thousand letters generated in one go. So that creates a 2,000-page PDF. And then that will use different paragraphs depending on the status of the person being written to. And it also generates emails to others as well. Yeah.
Really very impressive, and also especially as you explained at the beginning that you had like 3 months for this project to achieve that in 3 months. I think this is a significant accomplishment.
Well, thank you, but it wouldn't have been possible without web core. I mean, we could have done we could have done a Delphi app, desktop and server app probably. But yeah, but having to do a web app like this was, yeah.
And the system is live already?
Yeah, it's live. Yeah,
It's live. It's being used, I think, on a daily basis in the
Oh yes.
shops.
Oh, there are people who don't do anything other than use this system, so it's their job.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Howard, Russell, sorry. Thank you very much for this presentation. And so I propose we now go to some general Q&A. And therefore I will first of all share my screen, because I have this first of all freebie for you offered by Howard. And so this is the link where you can download it. And at the same time, I will also enable for the other colleague presenters microphone and camera, so that all speakers can now simultaneously speak. Where do I actually I can? Why not also Wagner? That Wagner is here. Maybe when there are questions on backend side, Wagner can chime in. Who do I not yet have? Let me have a look. Martin is here. Andrew is enabled. David is enabled. I think I still need to enable Howard. But actually, where is Howard in my list? I actually do not see Howard in my list. And I found Howard in the list. All right. So I think all of you can be Wagner. Hello, Wagner. Good to see you here live as well. So grab the utility from Howard, the freebie of today offered kindly by Howard. And of course, I also have something for my co-presenters for today. To thank you for your big effort to bring this presentation of the work you did with TMS WEB Core in this webinar. And so as a gift for you, you should actually have received this by email a couple of hours earlier. Masia did that for you. So the licenses you have are freely extended for 1 year as a thank you for being here and for presenting your work on TMS WEB Core. And that brings us to the Q&A, where I will disable my screen. So we have all of us a little bit bigger on the screen. And let's see if any one of you has questions. If you have questions, put these questions in the chat box. And you can also specify, of course, who you want to direct some specific question to. So far, I'm not seeing.
So let me tell you what my freebie does.
Okay.
It's a programming utility that you can search for any text in any number of files or subdirectories. When you find the text, you can double-click. It'll open that file right in your programming, like it'll open right in Delphi. So you can immediately find 100 places where this particular phrase exists in all your files. Once you've opened it, if you want to change something, like change the spelling, you can change the spelling of any phrase in any number of files. I couldn't possibly program without it with the thousands of lines of code I deal with. And then it creates backups almost instantly. So I make a backup about every half hour while I'm working. And so it's just a lovely programmer's utility. And download it, take a look at it. There's a little video and a little written help. It's just, I couldn't possibly live without it. I was going to sell it at one time and decided, oh, no, I've got other things to do. So it's a freebie, but it's lovely.
So quickly download it before Howard changes his mind.
It has an old web URL in it. I used to have a wanderingstar.com website, and somebody offered me $7,000 for the URL, and I just couldn't pass it up. So you can know that URL.
All right.
So that's all.
Okay. Wagner, did you follow the webinar all the time, or I didn't see that? Okay, here's a question for you all from Andrew. What is everyone's favorite recent addition to TMS WEB Core? And maybe I can add to that, what do you want to really see coming in a next WEB Core release? So I'm very curious to see your thoughts.
I can start. My favorite thing is this async and await functionality that kind of changed how coding happens and makes it a whole lot easier than all of these callback functions. I don't really have anything to add as far as what I wish TMS WEB Core would do, because I'm so busy just trying to implement what we have already and explore everything that I haven't hit anything that I need that isn't really there. So maybe in a year or so I'll be more accomplished and we'll be looking for other things. But at the moment, it's just trying to get a grasp on everything that is already part of WEB Core.
Yeah, I agree. It's the await thing is made it much cleaner code to start with. But yeah, don't add too much. It takes too much time to implement it all.
Okay, Howard, I see you mentioned sending email and text messages from WEB Core.
Yeah, I had a talk yesterday with the Amazon AWS people, and it's ridiculously cheap to do, but it's going to probably take, because as bad as I am at JavaScript, it's going to take me a month to figure out how to do it. I could stand having somebody save me a month. But yeah, for all my clients, I need to be able to have them send email and text messages to their clients and out of WEB Core.
What I think here is a possible approach, which is using a service with a REST API. I do know that there is a service like SendGrid who can send emails, and there is also a service like Twilio who can send SMS messages, for example, but other communication means. And maybe it's an interesting approach to have a look at accessing this from your WEB Core application.
And the only problem with all these services, they all want $15 to $40 a month for their service, and most of my clients are going to whine at paying $200 a year to send email. And Amazon Web Services dirt cheap, fractions of pennies for an email. And so within the next month or two, I'm going to make it happen, and somehow, and yeah, good luck. JavaScript.
I use I send out emails all the time from my app, but it just talks to my own mail server, and it just uses whatever's part of it. I don't need to pay anything, but I do have my own SMTP server, and it just connects to that and creates a message, and all seems to work fine.
What's
but
the code you use for that? You wrote your own code?
A lot of it I use is from the XData side of the server. So WEB Core sends a request to XData, and then there's the Indie library that does all the emails from the XData server.
Okay, thank you. I'll look into that. If you have a good reference on it, let me know.
It's just the Indie data set, but I can follow up if you like. If
you have a minute sometime, no big hurry.
Sure. Works great, but that's just for email.
Well, my daughter almost lives on her phone now, and most of the realtors are starting to spend too much time on their phones and text.
Okay. I see also a suggestion from Martin. So windowing enhancements, something to look at for future or upcoming WEB Core versions, so opening multiple pop-up forms at the same time. You mean because I think you can now already open multiple forms at the same time. Do you mean something in particular in association with that?
Can you move them around, and are they overlapping and clipping nicely?
Yeah, that is something that I agree that might need some more attention. You can, if you actually open up the multi-form demo, you can select from the radio group the type of form to open with draggable that are draggable from the caption, and just needs to be checked whether you can have multiple forms like that open at the same time and drag them around. That might indeed need some attention. Something.
No, you can do that with no problem. You can open 3 or 4 at once. Usually have to do a Windows set timeout before I call the next pop-up. And that little set timeout with 100 millisecond set timeout, then I can call 2 or 3 or 4 pop-ups all at once and drag them around. But the set timeout lets you do that.
Okay, some interesting tip here to have a look at from Howard. Okay, anyone else? Wagner, is your microphone working now? No, no microphone.
He's not talking anyway.
Maybe
No, you
that.
can't turn it on.
Sounds like you have a cat.
And now, Wagner? Hello?
Okay.
I have a general question about pop-ups.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Wagner, you're here live.
Okay,
Great.
I think it was a delay. Hi everyone, sorry for being here late. No, I didn't attend it from the beginning. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it. But I'm here for half an hour. I saw the end of Martin Sauer presentation.
Okay.
So very nice presentation. Actually, I was really hoping that maybe you could have one webinar for each one that presented here. That would be there is enough content to see all the applications. I would love to see the replay for the first applications.
The replay should normally be coming. Everything is being recorded, so everyone will be able to watch again or watch the parts you might have missed also later via our YouTube channel. So don't worry about that. General question about pop-ups. I tend to not use them because of concerns of usability on mobile devices. Question, do they work well there? As far as I know, the pop-up forms do work on mobile devices, but indeed the user interface is well, it's touch-based anyway, so like moving them, etc., is already different, and also I think it's not commonly used in other applications running on mobile. So
I'm using pop-ups all the time on my mobile app, and you can set the position of the pop-up when it pops up, and so you can make it show up on the mobile where you want it. But it works beautifully for me.
okay, I think like was shown here in the webinar with these 5 different projects from 5 really different angles, this really shows the freedom of choice, and so I think that's actually the core idea of what we do, both in terms of X data for the backend, web core for the front end, is really the freedom of choice, so that you can just mix and match what your preference is. That's the main idea and what drives us in making decisions. I see comments here about keyboards and old IBM keyboards, I guess.
Couldn't live without it. It's the best thing ever built.
This is true.
Martin, I guess
one
that
comment. One comment on those pop-ups. Use the await construct that you show in your demos. And that's the construct that works, is the await construct.
exactly. I think that's indeed makes developing way easier using the await to make your logic and the sequence of things. One thing that was not mentioned here, which I think might be an interesting topic, I saw these tips and tricks using await, for example. What has not been handled or mentioned here is security. And so I'm not sure, Martin, Howard, Russell, maybe a little less for Dave, because you use these embedded Raspberry Pi apps, which is less of a security issue, but not sure if you have any recommendations for users regarding security.
That whole stuff about JWT is pretty well documented, but there's always questions about it. But I think it's pretty useful and works really well with JWT, and SSL website is entirely possible to implement and works perfectly well and takes care of 95% of the security issues.
Yeah, we use JWT and SSL, so and reinforce the accessibility rules on the server as well. So,
Martin, you use in the backend the Feather JavaScript library, so I'm not sure from that angle if you have, I don't know, tips or concerns regarding security.
No, they have a client library as well, and you can select if you want to only use REST or if you also want JWT and WebSockets, and but I'm for that using the Feathers JS client, which is provided from the project, and we have written wrapper around these units, and those are just some links to the external entry points, and it's about 30 or 40 lines of code.
That's a client library, I assume, that is provided as a JavaScript library, and so you
exactly
access it from your Object Pascal code via a wrapper.
Right. Pretty simple. You just have to include a reference to that library in your main HTML code, and then you can use it.
Exactly. So, Andrew, you, of course, are, I think, from my guess, is the most experienced in using whatever JavaScript libraries that are around that you are interested in mixing with your application.
Yes, I find it super helpful just to, when you have a problem, if there's not a component already available, a quick search through GitHub or wherever, and adding it as a couple of lines to the project HTML, and then a little bit of JavaScript generally to initialize it, and it works really, really well. Flat Picker is a date time picker that I use, and it's totally generic JavaScript, and it takes like a minute to add, and they have full documentation about examples of how to do like 300,000 things with a date picker that no VCL component would ever have even thought of. So it works really great. I like it, and that's, I think, its biggest feature for WEB Core is just you can extend it in all kinds of ways. And some of these other projects are probably bigger in scope than even Web Core itself might be. They're just huge projects that, like the grids. I mean, it does so much. It's inconceivable now that I would use something else, right? It's crazy.
Exactly.
And there are just so many things you can do with it that are just so customizable. I was telling somebody the other day that I've been a VCL developer for decades, but with TMS WEB Core, I'm at the point now where I can do more in TMS WEB Core UI work than I could ever do in VCL because of these extra tools.
That is really about taking advantage of the vast amount of libraries that is around, and that is also for years proven in use, and many of these things backed by hundreds or thousands of users, and through the years have become rock solid and feature rich. So it would be a shame, I think, to not take advantage of this.
And it's also the speed of development of these other projects is also kind of remarkable. Like both Tabulator and Flatpicker have had updates in the past week. I posted questions to both of them about support issues, and they were fixed immediately, basically. And it's all a very dynamic environment. Sometimes it's too dynamic. Flatpicker put out a release yesterday that broke a bunch of stuff for a bunch of people, and today it's fixed, right? It's an amazing community overall, and it's good to be part of that extended community rather than just Delphi developers, right? You can reach out and be part of a larger group.
Just as maybe for users, but when you use external JavaScript libraries like the Flatpicker, like the Tabulator, I guess you bind some kind of fixed version within your Web Core application, or you just use CDN with the latest.
I tend to use CDN, that's the latest, but my app, if it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. If I was making an app that had 100,000 users, then I would obviously fix the version. But in my case, it's still early days, and I'm more interested in having the latest version of everything and making sure that it works. But certainly, that's another choice that you can make. You can even, in most cases, download the library and host it on your own site. So your community and the other sources of the library.
Exactly. I'm not sure from where the noise is coming. Someone in someone's room, there seems to be
I think it might be.
quite a bit of noise. I see in the chat box references to Xalt. So I think, Wagner, here is your opportunity to explain a little bit what Xalt is about. You need the microphone again. Let me have a look and give you the microphone again. And here you go.
Yeah, sorry, I turned it off the microphone and I couldn't turn it on again. Yeah, Xalt, for those who don't know, Xalt is a framework that we are developing, and hopefully we will release very soon. It's an addition to Xdata. Actually, maybe it can be used as a standalone tool as well to help you secure your applications. If I could summarize it, it's OAuth 2 and OIDC, a kind of OIDC server that you can implement in your application. So in summary, it will be easy for you to add security to your application and add login pages, for example, self-user registration, password confirmation, email confirmation, and things like that to your application with just a few lines of code, and provide tokens for users of API security. So the users of your API get tokens to access your API. So it's pretty much like that. And it will also, besides the backend, of course, it will have a part written in web core, because it will provide all the web core web pages for your end user to log in and register and confirm email and things like that. There will be a web front end also built in for that.
Not to want to give you even more work, but first question is, will it have two-factor authentication?
Not in the first version, but it can be. It's just a matter of 1.1 version. If you wait for two-factor authentication to release, I believe Rick Hazel will be very unhappy right now.
Okay, I don't want to disappoint Rick, so let's move the two-factor authentication to version 2.0.
Yeah, but we are working on we are polishing it very much. For example, we are already having translations for the user interface for many languages. So we are going into that level of detail to make it very easy to use, and it is extendable. And after release, there are lots of things to come for sure.
So something we definitely look forward to. All right, I think we already used a lot over time. Maybe for each of us, one last word. Howard, any last words?
No, just thank you for existing. I've used your tools forever. I used to buy lots of other toolboxes and don't have to. And working with me on this Firestore thing was wonderful because you and one of your developers, we worked together on it. So you're very responsive. I totally appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Howard. You're welcome. Dave, any last word from your side?
Yeah, I'll just echo that comment about the responsiveness. I've reported problems and seen them fixed the next day. So, yeah, very good.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Andrew?
Nothing to add, but maybe if anybody has a chance to go and add some comments to our TMS support tips and tricks threads, that would be great. There's lots there, but I'm sure there's lots more that we could add to help out anybody coming along, and I think that's a useful resource. So otherwise, this has all been great. Thank you.
Visit our website, support center, then the category or section TMS WEB Core, and the first top post item is the tips and tricks section. Lots of tips and tricks from Andrew, and meanwhile also for other users. So if you have your own tips and tricks, share them there. It will for sure be helpful for everyone. Okay, Martin, you have any last words you want to mention here?
Thanks for inviting me to be part of this webinar, and I'm looking forward to what your tools bring in the future.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin, as well, for being here and for your time. And then Russell, any last word from your side? The microphone, I can see that you turned it off. So let me turn it on again for you. Here you go. The microphone should be enabled now.
Oh, yes, yeah. Yeah, no, I just want to echo that support is excellent. The speed of response is really good. And the tips and tricks section is very useful. Always the first place to look. I think you're trying to do something as well. That's a good point.
Okay.
Well, so.
Thank you very much also for being here, for your time, for the presentation. One small thing that I want to add, and there's a special thank you to Bradley, because the Web Academy is actually a TMS WEB Core application. So what we are using now here is a TMS WEB Core app, where we use the OpenTalk RTC library for the real-time video communication. But Bradley especially created version 2.0 of this Web Academy application, where he added the capability where I can just, me as a host, select any one of the attendees and make you also a co-presenter. and as a host, manage the video and the audio and the screen sharing of everyone. And a small addition is also what you see in the bottom left of the screen, where you see the microphones that are enabled from the people talking. So a special thanks also goes to our colleague Bradley for creating this Web Academy version for hosting or for organizing webinars with many people involved. And I'm sure we will use that feature again in one of the upcoming webinars. So thanks everyone. Thanks a lot for making this possible. Thanks for your time, everyone here, for listening. Some of you might have missed a piece. Don't worry, we will bring up the replay and see you soon for another webinar, and have a further great day, and enjoy using Object Pascal, enjoy using Delphi, enjoy creating web apps, and have a great further day, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
All right.